There's not one guy, one person in the history of this program that's bigger than the program.
What's up, and welcome back into another Program Guyz Movie review. I'm Ryan Tyson, your host, and I just want to first off thank anybody that watched our first one of these over the Hunger Games prequel movie. We dropped that last Friday. It's on YouTube if you haven't gotten a chance. If you're checking in now and you're saying, "Oh, this looks like a good movie. I wanna talk about," but you haven't seen that one, go watch that one. That goes over a lot of details around what this series is gonna be, how we're gonna, when we're gonna post, what we're gonna post, all things like that. So once again, thank you for everyone who has taken a shot with us and watched that first episode. I got to start with the housekeeping, as always. Check out the Program Guyz podcast. The guys just dropped a fantastic episode this week on Program Roundup, talking about, the 4 teams that were selected for the college football playoff and the controversy that comes with them. So please go check that out. Subscribe to the channel if you can. It's completely free. So we are not charging you anything, and neither is YouTube. So please subscribe here and go listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you can find us. We are there, and we appreciate everything that you guys have done for us in the past, and continuing to support us moving forward. Moving on though, these are going to be quick. So I am really excited to talk about today's movie, which is Napoleon. Napoleon is a movie that I have been ecstatic about ever since I saw the trailer earlier this year. So it is directed by Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott is, a great director, Sir Ridley Scott. He was knighted by the Queen. And my favorite movie of Ridley Scott's is Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And I was really excited when I saw he was doing another historical biopic, essentially, of Napoleon Bonaparte. So I went into it and I was thinking to myself, it has the historical setting, check. It's a story of a man rising from, the lower ranks to the largest ranks possible, check. And Joaquin Phoenix was in a starring role, this time as the titular Napoleon Bonaparte. So check, 3 checks. So I was really excited about it. I was thinking to myself, this might be as good as Gladiator or even better. It's, spoiler alert here, it's not as good as Gladiator, but I did have a really good time with it. So really excited to talk about that with you guys today. To give you guys a little bit of background on Napoleon, Napoleon follows the life of the titular protagonist, Napoleon Bonaparte, who's played by Joaquin Phoenix, as he goes from a young army officer in the French 18th century France, so late 18th century. This is like the 1790s. And it moves through kind of his life and how he rose through the ranks and became the emperor of France in the early 1800s. And then, spoiler alert, after that, if you have not read the history of France, he becomes a bit of an outcast. This movie covers roughly about 3 decades of Napoleon's life. So the exact years are, I believe, 1793 to 1821. In particular, focus on this movie is paid to his battles that, shaped his rise. Napoleon is first and foremost an army general. So those pieces are really important to show as he's rising through the ranks. And then kind of the relationship, the volatile relationship that he has with his wife, Josephine, who's played by Vanessa Kirby. So as always, I start with what works here, and I usually like to start with the performances. And anyone who knows me knows I love Joaquin Phoenix. I think most people love Joaquin Phoenix, and he's great here. He's wonderful, as I expected. He's playing Napoleon with this grandeur and intelligence that really shows, okay, how did this man actually go from a regular army general all the way up to emperor of France and really take over this country's leadership? He's really funny. This is a really funny movie, and I didn't expect it. It's kind of got a dark humor to it and an awkward humor. And Joaquin does some things there that you're like, this is very strange, but it's like laugh out loud funny. Not what I was expecting going into this movie. He plays it stoic, but not completely. And I really enjoyed that because I think it just opens up a different side of Napoleon that like I wasn't expecting when I walked into the movie. You know, I think overall Phoenix just does a really great job. It's a movie that's all on his shoulders mostly. And I think he plays it really well and he sells it. It's not his best performance he's ever had. But you know, it's not a bad performance either. So I think it's always good to see Joaquin play a character like this. And it reminded me on how good he was in Gladiator. You know, I've already mentioned it, but my favorite Ridley Scott movie. But like performance aside, my favorite thing about this movie is by far the battle sequences and the cinematography that goes along with those battle sequences. When I tell you that there are some scenes in this movie that I have never seen done on film, I am being completely realistic when I say that. Like I mean that. Like there is a specific battle that takes place in like a snowy climate, and I'm not going to ruin anything for anybody, but it is unbelievable. The movie making is unbelievable there, and you really have to see it to believe what he's doing and what Scott is able to do. And I think it's also important to note, you know, his consistent work with his longtime collaborator, and I believe his name is Dariusz Wolski, who is his cinematographer. He's worked with him for a very long time, and you can just tell both of them are on the same wavelength and know exactly like what they want to show and how they want to show it on camera. There are breathtaking battle sequences, and I cannot recommend you go see it in a theater. Get on the biggest screen possible to see these sequences. They're really incredible. And it's a character piece, right? This man is a general, and you really have to believe that he is as good as the history books say he is at infantry and strategy and like winning these wars and these battles that take place over history. And that comes through in this movie. You actually can see like the wheels turning in Joaquin's performance and really understand, oh, this is how this man became so revered, right? So that is my favorite part of the movie. I think it's the biggest positive. And it's also the reason that toward the end of this video, I'm going to recommend this movie, that you go see it. There's some things that don't work, though, for me. And, you know, I usually go into that next. So let's talk a little bit about the negative. I think Vanessa Kirby as Josephine is pretty incredible. Like the performance is really good. But the character doesn't quite work for me. And I think this movie tries to have like two different stories it's basically trying to tell. One of these stories is Napoleon the general and the war and the battles that he faces. And then the other is really more of like a romantic dark comedy slash relationship drama between him and Josephine, Kirby's character. And I don't think like either of those things, you know, I think the war piece works a lot better than the relationship piece. And I think there's some decisions that were made on, you know, cutting things off the, you know, editing floor or whatever it may be, that, you know, Scott made a decision that with the theatrical release, he wanted to veer more toward the wartime character rather than, you know, the relationship. And this relationship is really a crux of the movie, but you don't feel that necessarily through their connection. And I think, you know, Scott has come out and said that there is a director's cut of this out there that mostly is filled with scenes of Josephine's character, Kirby's character, Josephine. And I'm really excited to see that because I think her character is interesting and intriguing, but it just doesn't really compete with like the other half of this movie, which is just so like grandeur and like massive and like hugely action packed. So, you know, I think it's a 4-hour director's cut, and Ridley, I am excited to see it. So please drop it whenever possible. And then I think everybody outside of the two main casts, I just don't think the characters work very well. I got kind of bored with people talking in rooms. I don't think the political piece of this movie is nearly as intriguing as the wartime piece. But that's not really, I don't think, the purpose of this movie. And although I think it would have been fascinating to see the political side, I think this movie really was about how do you show these battles and this relationship that shaped one of the most famous men in history. And, you know, I think half of that works and half of it doesn't. So I think the last thing I want to say on kind of negatives are, I think it's a little too long, you know, and I've said this about most movies that have come out recently, but about 20-30 minutes in there, I think could have been edited or at least diverted to maybe some more information on Josephine's character, and, you know, how important she was to Napoleon and some of the more consequences and decision making that happened around that relationship. So yeah, I think a little too long, but I say that about most movies nowadays when they clock in at above 2 hours. So finally, do I recommend? I'm going to say yes. You know, I didn't recommend the last one I did here, but I am recommending this one. I think you need to go see it on the biggest screen possible, because some of the craziness of this movie is how good the battle scenes are. They're incredible, and I highly recommend going to see them when you can in a theater. However, this movie is coming out on Apple TV Plus streaming. I don't know when, but it will come at some point. And if you can see it then, because you're already subscribed, see it then. You know, I think those battle scenes are worth it. I think there are other parts of this movie that are not worth it. However, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. Overall, I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. So not bad, not a masterpiece by any means. Mostly just because I wanted to see more from the script, and I know how well Ridley can make a movie like this because I love Gladiator so much. And it just didn't hit those highs for me. So that's it for Napoleon. I overall recommend it. Go see it. Drop some comments in on what you thought about it if you've already seen it. I'd love to chat with you guys. So that's all. That's it for number 2 on Program Guyz Movie Review. I'm really excited to continue to do these, and I'll have the next one for you guys at some point in the near future. But until then, keep pushing, baby.
3, 2, 1,
There's not one guy, one person in the history of this program that's bigger than the program.